Good, good.
I'm at the U3A. Okay, everybody. Good to see a big sort of crowd in front of me. What I'm competing against is a nice cool day outside. So sitting here may not be the best option. Anyway, the reason I am sort of doing these talks is essentially to highlight the importance of what Elon Musk is doing. Now, a lot of people may not have heard of him, but as far as I'm concerned, he's one of those people who is so gifted and has in him the resilience and the strength and the brains to be able to deliver on his vision. Now, when we talk about having to deliver on his vision, what are we talking about? It's essentially an idea that he has of how he sees the world. And how he sees the world is a world which has some big, big issues. And on those big issues, not too much action is being taken. We are sort of tweaking here and there at the global level. But in terms of having a big sort of solution being delivered, that is not forthcoming. For instance, we've got this climate sort of meetings taking place endlessly, but the net result of that is not much. So what he is doing actually is attempting to do something on his own with a vision that he thinks is fundamentally based on the use of energy. Now, we all know that the carbon sort of in the atmosphere is a problem with us. Now, in order to be able to sort of reduce that and minimize the amount of carbon we put in the air, he's come up with the notion of having to provide battery power. And those batteries get charged through alternative energy. And he says, what we have is the biggest energy source which is free, which is, of course, the sun. And we are not really using it as we should. What we do is we dig around and bring up these fossil fuels and burn them. And they're very pollutant. So in that sense, he says we've got to go towards alternative energy, wind power, maybe hydropower, even, but the sun is the answer for the whole world. The amount of energy that strikes the earth on a single hour is sufficient to sort of, see us through for a whole year, if we are able to capture it and use it. So in that sense, he has come out with, of course, the notion of having electric vehicles, EVs for short, and the name Tesla, I'm sure you have heard of it. Tesla is one of those people who has gone really ahead in delivering the type of vehicle which you occasionally spot nowadays. Each time I go out, I am on the lookout to see a Tesla. Now, the reason why we don't see too many Teslas is simply because the demand is so huge and production capacity is limited. And he's doing all he can to try and ramp up this capacity as much as he can. So that's one idea. So let's see what we're going to be having by way of our agenda today. Okay. Now, somebody told me that Mama is a product of UK. Either people like it or don't like it. So Elon is one of those types of characters. You either like him or you don't like him. Now, I'm rather curious to sort of find out myself as to why people don't like him. He's one of those people who maybe in terms of technology, a geek plus times 100, but he says it like he thinks. So that doesn't go down too well many times. So what we are seeing is a personality that has come through a rather sort of unsteady background that he had. We'll go into that just very briefly soon. But he's able to, in fact, speak in the manner that he thinks, and some people don't like it. Therefore, I would say they don't like it, and they don't look at even beyond that visual of his, to be able to see what is it that he is trying to deliver on. And delivery, mind you, is not one of those things that is so easy. Because over a period of time, we've seen through centuries, millennia even, what we find is people with a vision who have written fantastic sort of ideas and so on and so forth, but in fact are not able to deliver on that. Very few people in history have been able to deliver anything which is so substantive as to affect the whole world, all of humanity. And he's the only one, in my opinion, who is able to do that. And that's why I speak about him so often. So what are we going to talk about? Why do people like Musk? I've listed a few of his projects over here. Now we'll talk about them very, very briefly as well. All these that he has initiated. In fact, his idea is not to make big bucks like Bezos or Branson and all those other people. His idea is to try and find a solution to the world in such a manner that if a byproduct is, of course, financially rewarding, that's by the way. But in terms of being able to sort of achieve his vision is what he's trying to do. So what has he able to do so far? His focus is on sustainable energy, as I said. Battery power, batteries charged through solar cells, wind, hydropower, whatever it may be. And these batteries are then used in a vehicle, a car. And car is by the most popular mode of transport for us. Now, it doesn't just mean a car, but it means anything that is mobile, that is able to move us from one point to another. So he's got this company, Tesla, immensely successful, and we'll talk more about it. Now, he's also got a project called SpaceX. Now, one of his ideas about humanity is that he says, look, the Earth is our plan A. Where's plan B? We don't have a plan B. Now, in order to be able to sort of ensure that we survive, no matter what sort of disaster strikes us, like dinosaurs were wiped out 60 million years ago. If something like that were to happen, we would be wiped out and all civilization would disappear. So he says we need to have a plan B. And for that, he wants to be able to try and colonize Mars. Now, it's a big idea. Colonizing Mars means essentially being able to have people over there and do all the things that we need to do. So what we are seeing here is, of course, a multi-planet species is what he's got in his mind, that humans are not just earthbound, but can go beyond. Another project of his is Starlink. I'll talk about it as we go along. And there's Solar City, there's AI, Neuralink, and so on. More of that as we go along. Now, who are the people who don't like him? Now, that's strange. When he's talking about so much that could be in the interest of humanity, why would anybody would not want to like him? One reason I gave you earlier on, maybe the style of his speaking and his straightforwardness may have sort of upset a few people. But then you have the President of the United States, Biden, who doesn't like him. So much so that when Biden invited all the automotive the companies to the White House, he left him out. And that meeting was supposed to be for development of EVs in USA. So you can see the amount of bias there is in Biden. And the reason being, of course, his party has been funded by the unions. And Musk's factories, he pays them so well, nobody wants to unionize. So all these GMs, the Fords, the Chryslers, all these people, they have unions and they've been sort of donating large amounts of money to the presidential sort of race, Democratic Party. And therefore, he is so blatantly sort of lying when he comes to the podium. He says, Mary Barra, she's the head of GM. You have done the most for EVs in USA and for the world. Come off it. How can he so blatantly lie at an international sort of forum to be able to say such, stupidities? When everybody knows Tesla is the one who's way, way, way ahead. So you can see, I mean, Biden has lost his mind and he's not able to sort of make sense. Anyway, who are the other people? The automotive industry. We can understand their concern because he's going to take away the business. Now, if you go back a bit in time, when the railroads were popular and the cars were just coming into general usage, the automotive company bought up anything to do with, alternative energies and so on, and shelved them. So much so that the automotive industry had these highways being built, railroads not that much, and so on. And the search for better forms of energy was also diminished. So you can see these big lobbies, and that lobby is still at work with today, as in every country in every sort of area. But in this automotive industry, they are terrified with Tesla. So that's one. And then, of course, you've got people like Bezos, the Amazon guy. Now, he wants to be able to sort of compete with Elon Musk in having to build rockets. And he did, I think they went a few hundred miles or feet that they came down. That was the end of it. Big show business. Same thing with Branson, the Virgin guy. I mean, these guys are really quite astonishingly close-minded and short-sighted. And their focus is just making money. Okay, now, one of the things that is lately in the news is about Twitter. Now, Twitter is one of those social media entities that is very popular. Now, Elon Musk, with all his other ideas, he wants to be able to also access not just a group of 100 million people, whoever it is that they are using, but globally. So with that idea, he wanted to sort of see whether he could improve on the product. And I'm sure he would have introduced it, improved it enormously. But the question is, was he able to do it in a manner that was acceptable to the general financial world or to the industrial world? And that's where the problem comes. We'll talk about it more because the matter is now in court cases. I'll tell you a bit more on that. Okay, now just a little bit more about his personal life. He grew up in South Africa, and his parents, mother here, father very mixed European heritage, partly Jewish as well in his lineage, and mother a Canadian, and they had Elon and his brother. Now his father and he didn't get on too well because his father was a bounder, very smart guy, too smart, I suppose. So I thought Elon got the brains from him as well and from his mother. Now the mother, she's still modeling at the age of 70. That's her, you can see. And then, of course, he got married and he's had twins and triplets as well. So he's very keen on having a family. And then his brother, how did he start? He left South Africa and came over to Canada because through Canadian nationality of his mother, studied there for a little while and then went to the USA. Basically, the idea was to try and see whether he could get into the type of field which interests him. He started off with engineering and did physics as well. So he's got very clear ideas about, the fundamentals, as it were, of technology. Anyway, he was one of the people who set up PayPal. PayPal is one of those paying type of entities. I use PayPal all the time because you don't have to put your card number every time for making payment. So he's the one who started. So that's how he made the money first. Because PayPal was bought up by eBay, and they paid him, several sort of million, and he used that money to start on his vision. So here we go. Now, some of the ideas that he had was, of course, I mentioned SpaceX, Tesla, the automotive company, Solar City. Now, because he's talking about sustainable energy and batteries, the power to sort of charge the batteries should come from the sun. So he's got this notion that if you put these tiles, solar cells, if you like, on the roof, like a lot of people do at the moment, but he does it on a much more industrial level. And he feels that this business is something that's going to grow enormously. So he's doing that. And then he's also doing the boring company. Boring company is to tunnel, because, huge amounts of traffic jams all over the cities and big cities. So he wants to do the tunneling. He's already done a little bit of that in Las Vegas and is successful. And he's very keen on open AI. Now, AI is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is much more, if you like, like an algorithm, like a program, which you write and able to then have it do the work for you. Now, in the process of that logic that you build into the program, it shows a fair amount of intelligence. It can do a lot of problem solving and so on. And then there is another aspect to artificial intelligence, and that's called AGI, artificial general intelligence. Now, that's what we have. We are able to sort of have an intelligence that we grow up with and we learn as we are growing up. So we are able to deal with the general world. And we don't have to be programmed like a robot. Anyway, that's the two big difference. And he's into that as well. And of course, into neural link. Because he's concerned for humanity, he also has, before him, a lot of people are affected mentally, brain damage, like quadriplegics. They can't walk, they can't move, and they have issues with the brain that has been damaged. So what he has done is to set up a company that enables to put probes into the brain and put a little chip that enables the damaged parts of the brain to be bypassed. Now, that's a big thing, because if you can bypass the damaged parts of the brain, which, for instance, was controlling a limb, then you can activate that limb. So that's his Neuralink sort of project, which he's also making good progress on.
What was the name of that last company?
Neuralink. I'll come to that. Yeah. Neuralink. Yeah.
How does that work?
How does that work?
How does that work? Locating damaged part of the brain.
Well, because he's going to be putting probes which are as thin as our hair, so that they go inside and they're able to sort of, bypass the circuits inside the brain.
So they could train other cells, healthy cells, to replicate the damaged ones.
Well, the damaged ones are replicated by a chip, which has the logic into it, which can transmit information.
Chip.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more as we go along. Okay, so his main idea to begin with, let's get back to this one here, all transition to sustainable energy. And he's doing a lot, and we'll see what else he's doing. Sorry.
Let's ask a quick question.
Yeah.
Tesla cars on sale in Britain. The Tesla cars on sale here. Are they made in America but shipped over?
At the moment, yes, because we don't have a factory. Although the last cabinet, Kwame, he was bending over backward to try and attract Elon to come and build a factory here. Government was promising all sorts of land and facilities. But instead, what Elon has done is opened a factory in Berlin. And I'll show you that a little bit on it. Okay, what are the projects? A bit more detail. I'll quickly run through that. Automotive. Tesla has boomed in 2020. Musk has propelled Tesla to become the most highly valued car maker in the world. And then he's got the aerospace, where he wants to sort of colonize Mars. He's got telecommunication, which is essentially Starlink, which is to try and give internet access to the whole world. Now, think about it. When I talk about the whole world, we're talking about half the world which doesn't have anything. We do have, but a lot. And we'll see how he does it. Energy, of course, we talked about. Transportation, he's got other forms of transportation, intercity, travels at the speed of sound as it were, hyperloop in tunnels and so on. So he's building tunnels to that effect. And then we'll talk about AI, I think, as we are going along, and the healthcare, just Neuralink. Okay. Now, this thing about Twitter. He's in trouble because yesterday, I think the courts heard. What he did was he made an offer to Twitter, $44 billion. First, he wanted to get a seat on the Twitter board, but then everybody said, no, we don't want you. So he said, okay, I'm going to buy you outright totally. So he made the offer. At that time, the price of the share was about 40 odd thing. So he gave a little premium and said, okay, for 44 billion, I'll buy the whole company. Now that sort of went down like a lead balloon with everybody. And then, of course, he started to look at this Twitter in a bit more detail because they did do due diligence, but not to the point where you could say you had all the information, because also these companies don't give you information freely about their own operations. So there are things called bots. Now, bots are not human, but artificial entities that are become part of the crowd that is using Twitter. These bots are created artificially in order to boost your own particular voice on Twitter. Now, everybody thought there was only 5% bots there. But as it turned out, there were more than 20 to 30% bots. So Elon says, look, if that amount of bots are there, which are not real humans, my offer, I'm not going to go through this. So they took him to court. And now the first session took place a couple of days ago. And the court has decided we'll send it to trial. So it may be that he may not be forced to buy it, because if he doesn't want it, nobody can force you, but some penalty will be imposed, maybe $1 billion or whatever. He can well afford to do that anyway. Yeah, Twitter forced us to complete the $44 billion deal, and he's got us, an army of lawyers as well. Okay, one other thing, apart from Tesla cars, and it's part of the company itself as well, he's come up with a robot called Optimus, or for short, Tesla bot. Now, why has he created a humanoid type of robot? Because he says, look, Tesla as a car is not just a car company. It is a most unusual company because there's so much technology in it. And the technology that he's building into the car is auto driving, full self-driving, FSD, which means that you can just ask your car to come forward, you just sit in it and it drives you like Uber, but without a driver. Now, in order to be able to accomplish that type of advances in automotive driving, that technology is humongous. You see, we human beings learn as we're growing up how to dodge things, and we recognize it's a chair and so on. But for a car on the road, they have to sort of also be alert. And he has in the car programs which enable you to sort of get the data and then be able to recognize that as something. And behind this technology is a huge computer called Dojo. It's the biggest computer in the world. And it has immense processing power. So already he's on version 11 of this FSD. 100,000 cars already have FSD, and they're sending back information on their driving and picking up data all the time. So he's collected billions of miles of driving information, which no other car company has done or can do even at the moment. So he's built up a very, very good. And if he says, okay, if a car can do that, I'm building up so much intelligence from recognition of object, I can put that in a robot. So a robot then will be able to walk around and dodge all the obstacles in the way and so on, and be able to do the thing. So that's what behind it. But more about this robot is this. It's going to be only about this big, not threatening, and has a certain amount of muscle power and so on, but totally non-threatening to a human being. And he says, if you can look at this thing here, his purpose to have a Tesla bot is to eliminate dangerous, repetitive, and boring tasks. So if we are able to get that type of work done by bots, then human beings have more time for creative work and output. So he says, with this type of technology, this is what he says. He says, I was surprised that people do not realize the magnitude of the Optimus robot program. The importance of Optimus will become apparent in the coming years. Those who are insightful or who listen carefully will understand that Optimus ultimately will be worth more than the car business and worth more than the FSD. And that's my firm belief. But he says, this is going to become such huge business that is going to sort of overtake my Tesla car. And Tesla cars are going to be half the cars in the Western world will be Tesla or Tesla associates. Because he says, with the current sort of automotive industry, if they're not changing, they're going to go under. Okay, so if no action is taken, so he's taking action. He's taking action by delivering on his vision to try and save the earth and cut down the carbon emission and so on. Otherwise, you'll have that type of a situation, flooding and heat waves and drought and so on. It'll kill off a third of us plant species if we don't do anything very soon. That's his mission of Tesla. Here it's just basically saying the amount of CO2 emissions that are contributed by the transport industry is quite big. So if you say half of it is for industrial and for residential use, the other half is transport and other things. So transport is a very significant part of emissions. Now, these are the type of factories he's building. The one he built just most recently in Berlin. And it's a humongous study. I think it's about 3/4 of a mile long and 1/4 of a mile big. And they produce cars. Now, the capacity of that thing, which hasn't been ramped up to its full capacity, is 2 million cars a year. So that's a humongous. All of Volkswagen produces 10 million a year from 19 factories. But this one factory of Tesla will produce 2. And he's not only got one factory like that, but he's got one in 2 in Shanghai. Each will produce 2 million. And he's got one in Austin, Texas, which is also going to produce in 2 million. So you can see a humongous amount of production capacity is in the making. So you'll have Teslas, very much, and therefore cutting down on carbon. Okay, as far as the power for the residential, we're big consumers of carbon emission as well, because we have air conditioners, cookers, and washing machines, what have you. So here's the model of a home that he's already done. He's got solar cells, and he's got this power battery here, so that when sun shines, the power battery will be charged and will provide power to the house. And if there is excess power, he's going to put it back into the grid and charge the grid. So sooner or later, the grids are also going to be going under if they don't change. And this is a project called Solar City, and you can see beautiful houses. And he's got tiles which are going to be producing, electricity, because it's got the solar panels in it, so that the looks are also taken care of. Now in Australia, when they had the drought and so on, but they've got this wind sort of turbines. He delivered these big factories of the batteries, so much so a whole city, small one, ran on these batteries, which means on non-pollutant type of energy. And there are other places like Hawaii and some places in the USA who are already going that way. Okay, Starlink. Now I told you that Starlink is the internet space, the space internet, which means that you've got satellites going around the world, and they'll be able to sort of beam the signals from the satellite to your modem, and you have the signals. And that is something that he is very keen on bringing about. It's already operating. I think about close to 1 million people are using it in various countries. I had also an offer, but then since I live in a flat, I need to put this dish out there. So it's ideal for homes. Or if you're sitting in the middle of Congo with nothing, just a battery and a little dish, you'll have access to the whole world's internet. It's as powerful as that. See, here it is, a significant unmet demand for low-cost global broadband capabilities. So half the world don't have internet, and therefore they don't have education. They don't have the markets. So you can see the moment you have this ability, even to the remote part, you don't have to dig cables and lay it down. You just buy a little dish and have a battery, sun-powered, and you're through. Now, these dark parts are where it's low penetration as far as internet, and the green parts are where there's enough access to internet. So you can see more than half the world has little access. Now, how does this satellite thing work? He's already put 2,000 satellites. Now, why is he able to put so many? Because putting a satellite is very expensive business. Now, each time NASA sort of blasts their rocket up, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, gone to this, because these are not reusable rockets. But he has come up with reusable rockets, which I'll talk a little bit later, and is able to put these satellites up into the air. And they communicate between themselves and then project the beams down to your home. So this is the plan here. You can see satellites sending it to either a local dish or to your home. Now, SpaceX, he first of all went to Russia to buy these missiles to see whether he could sort of modify them and use them as rockets. Russia was not too keen to sell him because they thought he's going to use it on them. But nevertheless, he came back and started building his own rocket. And the idea behind his own rocket is that we don't want a rocket which just goes up and then fizzles out or burns up and that's it, after putting the payload up. He says what we want is a reusable rocket. Like if you had a plane which just took you from point A to point B and then sort of got dismantled, nobody will be able to afford to sort of travel. So he said this is the same logic here. We want to be able to send a rocket up, put the payload up and come down. And with that, he's cut down the cost by tens of thousands. Something that costs you 50, 60 billion, now he puts it up for 2 billion. So you can see there are his rocket. These are coming back. You see these two on the far side there. Yeah, this one here. They're coming back after having put the bin payload up. And the other thing that he catches them is on these little things on the sea as well. So he's got so many ideas that is conserving, if you like, the hardware. Now this is a little detailed one, but this is just basically showing you how a rocket, this is the type of rocket, it goes up and then, and then disassociates the boosters from its side, which then come back and land here, which you saw. And then it continues. And then after having put that other thing also comes back and lands here. So you can see it's a pretty well sort of designed. And that's why he's able to put 2,000 satellites already. Because his Falcon rockets go up and then come down, they go up again. Now, Mars mission, he needs to have 1,000 people on Earth. Is that a Starship can carry? He's building a Starship which can carry 1,000 people. Because, Mars is in such an orbit that it can't sort of all of a sudden, go whenever you want. Every 2 years, it's within optimal sort of range. Then you have to send your rockets up. So anyway, his rockets are getting ready. I think the FCA or whatever that entity is, FCC, they have to give approval for his Starships. Because, as experimental sort of ships, they burn up as well. So these people are getting say, oh, no, we don't want to give it to so fast. So he says, well, they're holding my progress back. Okay, Neuralink. This is the chip that is going to sort of sit in your brain. And the electrodes are going to be, or the probes are going to be as thin as your hair. They go into the brain. And these pigs, Dorothy, Gertrude, and Joyce, they're helping in the sense that they had that electrodes put in there and then taken out to see if there's any damage done. There's no damage done at all. So he was quite, everybody gave the head for him to go ahead. So this type of experimentation is doing is not going to damage anybody. The other thing that he is also doing, because once this FSD, full self-driving, comes in, he's going to be able to have a big company called robotaxis. So you don't have to buy a car. You just sort of punch the number, the car comes, picks you up, drops you, and goes away. So you can see the type of vision he's got, which is going to cut down on the accident, because the FSD is much more safer than a human being driving. At the moment, the human beings in USA, 1 million of them die through accidents. FSD is going to stop that. A major part of this is going to be safe. So that company is also in the offing once you have the production of these cars at the level that you can do that. So autonomous driving will radically change the world. Elon is referred to as a rare event in human history, from exerting mental energy and focus to controlling driving activity. So basically, it's going to take away your time and then let the technology handle it, and it's safer. Now, this is the amount of sales of EVs that are going on. The ones in red are in China. China is quite far ahead in EVs. They are the biggest users of electric vehicles. And then, of course, you can see in these colors over here, yellow is Germany, and then blue is the USA, light blue, and France, and so on. So you can see the rest of the world is having less than the total numbers of EV in China. But Musk is the one who's going to sort of really ramping it up, and no other company. General Motors and all that, they're asleep. You can see that the best-selling electric car in the world, the red one is Tesla. And these are old figures. Now I think they've exceeded to 1.5 million, I think, already on the road. And I think next year it'll be about 3 million or even 4. And by the end of the decade, they expect to produce 20 million cars a year. Just him in his factories. Okay. I'll leave time now for some questions. Let's see how much time we've got. Yeah, we've got plenty of time. So if there's any particular project that you are interested in knowing more about, pose a question on that, and I'll see whether I can answer that. Okay. Right. Yes, Ruth.
Sorry.
No problem.
Could you say more about Neuralink?
Yeah. Well, Neuralink has been a company that he has funded, and it has created, Tesla is one of those companies that has so many specialities. You may have heard of the chip shortage recently, right? And the automotive industry was, reeling from that. But Tesla, they made their own chip. They did actually physically make it, but they reprogrammed the one that they had so as to get more out of it. So their production wasn't that much affected, whereas the rest of the automotive industry was affected. So in the same way, this technology that they have of producing these chips, they're going to be put into the brain. It's going to be the size of a little penny, small penny, and it'll be just sitting on just under the skull. And it'll have thousands of these little wires as thin as the hair going to various parts of the brain. Now, it depends on which part of the brain is damaged, because that part of the brain that will have that, and they'll be able to sort of see the signals coming in from the body. The way the body works is this, that we have these, receptors, or they send signals, through the nerves to the brain. And then that gets processed, and then signal comes back and muscles act. So what happens is that if the brain is damaged, then the signals don't come back. Although signals are going there, but they're not reaching the parts of the brain that should send you back the message. So this little cell, the chip rather, is going to send the message back after having picked up the signals from the muscles coming through. It'll do the right thing and then send the right signal back, which means your hand will then work. See, that's the idea. Yeah.
The Mars project, is the idea to populate Mars, or is it just in case of apocalypse here to take human knowledge to store on Mars?
No, the idea is to physically have a colony there, and his spaceship can carry 1,000 people, and he's already testing this. It blew out the other day because some little gas leaked or whatever. But anyway, he's the one who's doing it. See, no one else. Problem with NASA is political. One government comes in, funds it, the other one takes away the funds, and so progress. What he has done is 50 times faster than anybody else can do, except China. China, because of their type of government, they can very quickly decide and implement. So Elon Musk is the equivalent of China, if you like, in terms of delivery. So he's going to have a little colony. And this spaceship, he's not talking about one spaceship, he's talking about hundreds of spaceships that are going to sort of take the material and the people, get the colony going there so that you have an independent type of civilization, at least preserved and living, in case there is a problem. Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned Biden and politicized, but did you say, I didn't quite catch it, you mentioned the business of fracking. Is it because Biden has invested in that or has approved fracking that he's not interested in stuff?
Yeah, he's interested in EVs, but the fact that the automotive industry is not at the point where they can start delivering vehicles, the unions have got to him and say, look, give us a lot of subsidies. And that subsidies is announced, I think something to the order of about $10,000 to $12,000 for each car that goes. And for some reason, the ruling is such that Tesla doesn't benefit from that, because they said it's only for companies that build less than 200,000 cars a year. Of course, Tesla is building 500,000 to 1 million cars a year, so they have excluded that, which is a total bias. And of course, the union people are behind that. So the Democratic Party is for green energy and so on. So fracking is there. I mean, if you ask me, the politics of USA is crazy. While for Europe, it makes a lot of sense for Russia to be its friend because it's got so much resources and energy and so on. Angela Merkel was absolutely right in developing good relations with Russia. But USA has always been wrong from the very for the World War II. They excluded Russia, no Marshall Plan, nothing for Russia. Because you know how big Russia is? 11 time zones. It's like half the world, half the Asia of continent. So what the idea behind is, USA says we'll have to sort of get rid of Russia sooner or later, fragment it to the point where it can be smaller entities and swallow it up or do whatever it is. So this policy is being engaged. So this Ukraine war is totally unnecessary. All Russia was saying, look, we don't want to have a nuclear sort of missiles on our border, same way that Cuba was having missiles in USA. When USA can be so demanding of Cuba and still punishing Cuba, still today, but when it comes to Ukraine, they said, no, we're going to we want them to become part of NATO. So you can see the absurdity of US foreign policy. And therefore, I feel that Biden, who's not he may have been a good senator, but as a president, I think he has failed, in my opinion, because he's started the Ukraine war. He could have avoided that easily by telling Ukraine, okay, don't sign this NATO thing. But no, that's it. That would have stopped the war. And yet what has done, price of oil has gone up, famine all over the world. And who's responsible for this? I hold Biden responsible. Okay, anything else? Yeah, Ruth.
I just wondered if you know about him, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
About his life.
What about him?
Just about his life and how he got to where he is.
Okay, how he started.
Yes.
Well, he grew up in South Africa. Mother worked very hard. Father was a bounder, but nevertheless, a very smart engineer. So when he was growing up, he had a bad relationship with his father. And he read a lot. He was one of the first people to, when he was just 12 years old, made a little computer program that he sold for $1,000 to one of these companies. So you can see he was already into it and into all sorts of things, what boys do at that age and more. But then he saw that his opportunity lay in America because of all the ideas that he had. Therefore, he left because his mother was Canadian and she was able to support him. Father had, disappeared out of their lives. And now that he has moved in and very much the person, one thing about him, he's not after money. He even put on Twitter, he said, should I sell my shares? He's got to pay, $5 billion in taxes because, the USA works this way, that if your stock holding goes up, you have to pay tax on that, even if you don't sell, which I had to, because I had a few Tesla shares. So when I sold it, I had to pay tax on that, when I didn't even sell, it goes up in terms of calculating the wealth. So he sold, so his motivation is totally different. And that's why I think a lot of people like him, but then a lot of people don't like him either. So he was very successful. First, he did that little program. Then he did the PayPal, which is very, very useful. Then he he bought a little company, with just 2 engineers in it, Tesla, and they were trying to make cars. So he bought it and then put money and his own brains into work and really made it into this giant of a company that it is today. Then, of course, he's got these multiple other projects. And, the question was asked, how do you sort of divide your time between this, the space projects, the solar thing, your family, and so on? He says, I just give a certain percentage of my time to each of these activities. But he works very hard. He used to sleep at the factory itself, when the gigafactories was being built. Very dedicated, very competent, very good. So I have a lot of confidence in him.
Was it the first electric car, Tesla?
So the first electric car was made, 50, 60 years ago. People, this ordinary battery, they make it. But this is the first one that had a battery, which is called lithium phosphate battery. Lithium is plentiful available. And he used these little cells and made thousands of them and packed them in. And that's how he innovated. Yeah.
I remember in the 50s, I think it was, Harrods had sort of electric vans. It's running around London. Deliveries.
Oh, yeah. Well, even up, you see this.
Milk floats,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, these are the old batteries, the lead batteries.
There's some things out the box and very diverse in these enterprises. Probably not so unusual. People like the Dragons, lots of people who invest in other companies who started ideas up, but haven't got the capital or the connections to make them go up, which he has. This explains why he's so many fields he has a finger in, and helps them to develop it. They're all not all necessarily his ideas.
Oh, no, I think
But
it's,
somewhat, but one field that interests me particularly is drones. Is there ever an interest in drones? Because I think the idea of drones delivering parcels, for example, from Amazon, is such a really sort of short step from where we are on drones.
yeah, absolutely right. I think drones are used now more so not for delivery, but for fighting.
What?
But for fighting at the
Oh,
moment.
yes,
I think Iran has just supplied drones to Russia.
Yeah,
And I think Turkey was also ahead in technology, and they were supplying the Ukrainians with drones.
yeah.
So you got,
Military use is always ahead
yeah,
of development, because it's they've got all the money.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yes, the concept of Starlink is something that, really excites me.
Yeah.
Energizes me. But could you tell me, you've told me, how it works generally, but what is the precedence of affordability or accessibility of Starlink?
Yeah.
Could I, as an individual,
Yeah.
access it now or?
Yeah, you can access it now. At the moment, you see there, when I showed you the diagram, I didn't go into the details of it too much, but there's something called latency. Now, if you look at the current sort of satellite that are used for communication, you see a delay. So like somebody's on the other side of the world and you pose a question, there's a pause, and then he wakes up and then gives you a response. You might have seen that on TV often. That's because it has to go 22,000 miles up and then come back, the signal. Now, this satellites of Musk, they're only a few hundred miles up, which means that the latency is minimal. It's just a matter of milliseconds, 20 to 40 milliseconds. So it'll be instantaneous communication. So that's one good thing about the mechanics of it. The affordability is basically this. He's got a package that he delivers to you for $500. And that package gives you the modem, the dish, and any cable that might be required. And of course, you have the monthly charge as well. And he's charging at the moment $100. And the speed that he's offering is of like what we get on fiber today. It's about over 100 megabits per second. So you have, I think, a real need of this type of advanced technology, not so much in the cities, because in the cities we've got these fiber, the roads are being dug up and you can get even 500 MB. But for those people who are in the countryside or in the village or somewhere else who have no hope of anything, this is something fantastic. So now, individually, you may not be able to afford it if they are poor people, but a village can afford it, $500, which means that they can have a whole school running on that, and even a business.
Family membership. Family membership, so that we can share.
Can you speak loudly?
Sorry? A village.
A village, yeah.
That's right.
So, I'm talking about he's talking about the accessibility to the rest of the world, which it doesn't have this facility. So if he does deliver on that front, it's going to change the world. Because, first thing, even when the mobiles came up, a fisherman, with a little mobile, he could sort of think, and there says somebody inside the city, 100 miles away, he's looking for fish and he can quote the rate very quickly and say, yeah, I've got a market buyer and so on, deliver. So, that technology immediately, rather than him having to store the thing in ice and keep it and take it to his bicycle or whatever. So technology is delivering on so many fronts. So if that happens with the Starlink, then I think it's going to be a fantastic sort of achievement.
Leveler.
Hmm?
A leveler, to be a leveler.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
Leveling up for the test.
Leveling up.
People in Africa, it kind of reminds me of the wind up really, possible for people in Africa to know, wind up But this of course
Yeah.
would help an infrastructure.
Yeah, and not only is he able to provide the access, but Google is working with him so that all their data can be accessed by people, for education, whatever searches, knowledge. So it's going to be an incredible gift to the poor countries. Yeah, Ruth.
It was fascinating me when you balanced Elon Musk with China. And I was wondering, that's huge implications for politics and where the world is going.
What about it?
Huge implications. Elon Musk is sort of in balance with what China can do.
Yeah. Well, if for a moment we just put away our cap of all this negative publicity of China, then we can see that China is really, not out there to sort of kill everybody. What they have created is a type of a demon of China and a demon of Russia. So the Western press is really guilty of having done a big disservice to its people. China at the moment has a different type of government, as we know. It's more autocratic, but yet he has been able to deliver upliftment of 800 million people out of poverty in a few decades, which no country in history has done it. Okay, their methods may have been a little bit rough, but then because they had to move certain people from here, there, everywhere, but they managed to put the food on the table. Once you have the food on the table, then you start worrying about free speech. But until then, who was to worry about free speech? Now, what they have done in terms of Elon Musk is they have given him access to the China market and manufacturing facility in China, where he's wholly owner of that entity. Whereas the normal sort of policy is to have shared ownership with the local partner, and you come in and make the entity. In Elon Musk's case, says, no, you can come in, you can be owner of this. And he has done this and is producing. So they are basically saying, so long as that new technology comes in and helps us, economically, we are gaining all the time. And that's one of the reasons why their EV industry has really shot up. Yeah.
Electric cars in particular, because everyone says, oh, that's the way the future stop pollution. Let's say planet electric cars is the way to go. It just happened recently, my wife needed a new car, or we thought she did. And I went into electric cars, and all the dealers I spoke to said, what's the mileage a year? So I said, well, 3,000 to 4,000 miles a year, which is very small and not unusual for people who just want to pop around doing shopping and not go very far. And they all said, at the moment, it's not cost effective to buy an electric car with that mileage, because the battery itself needs a simulation to do at least 10,000 miles a year. At least, and it's very expensive to replace a battery if you don't use it. Will that be the case in the future?
Well, his main sort of strength comes in, he calls his factories the machine that produces the machine. It is so highly efficient. Some of the pictures, if you go to YouTube, you can see, some of these robotic type of entities working these. And he's got a press, which is 25,000 ton press, I think, that you put a sheet of metal there and half the car comes out. So what we see is production being ramped up with efficiency, and the battery production is also coming down. Because at the moment, the most expensive component of a Tesla is the battery. Now, battery costs are coming down because he's making it vertically integrated, meaning that you don't have to have intervening middlemen to supply you with lithium and so on. He's going to the level of buying land where mines are there of lithium in USA itself, so that he is vertically integrated. So the cost of Tesla will come down. One, through the efficiency of production. The second is vertical integration that he's undertaking. And of course, as time goes by, there'll be more competition and therefore even more efficiency. As far as charging is concerned, the technology of the battery is enabling you to sort of give you 300 miles, I think, at the moment before charge. Now they're upping it to 500, and before long it'll be 1,000,000 miles. When they say 1,000,000, what they're talking about is not at one go, but the recharging, the recharging, because this after recharging, the battery goes down. I mean, in the sense it deteriorates. So they're going to make batteries which are going to be recyclable and are not only recyclable, but also rechargeable. And therefore the cost of that thing is going to come down.
Is there an endless supply of lithium?
Yeah, well, guess who's got the biggest amount of lithium?
China.
Afghanistan, the poorest country in Asia, has the biggest amounts of lithium.
So
It's like the new oil, actually, in Saudi Arabia.
which country did you say?
Afghanistan.
Oh, Afghanistan.
Now, they don't know they're sitting on that, but the Russians told them, look, half your country is all lithium.
Is
So
there an endless supply of lithium?
they've got endless amount. Yeah, lithium is not that rare.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there is a source, a metal or whatever, crucial for batteries. Is it Russia? I read a report some time ago that they actually have sources of something that's absolutely vital. Lithium. I mean, where is lithium? Common.
Afghanistan has large amounts of lithium, and also South America. In fact, in Bolivia or one of these places, the whole lake has lithium. And what they do is they evaporate this water and then take the sediment out and process it. And they're the biggest producers at the moment. But it's a long, tedious process.
That's the battery we use in good camera. Lithium battery.
Yeah, lithium. And then of course, in that lithium is the body, but the cathodes and the anode, the little tips, they require metal. And the type of metal that is being used is cobalt and nickel. And cobalt comes from Congo, where there's a lot of child labor and so on. So Elon Musk has said, we're not going to use cobalt. And then he's made a deal with Indonesia. They have the biggest nickel deposits, and they're saying, oh, please come and open up your factory here. I will give you good advantage. So he's carrying on discussions with that. So nickel, and then of course they'll have iron as well. So that technology is moving to the point where more common metals can be used, cheaper methods for production, and longer life being given to these batteries, and recyclability as well. If it comes to the end of it, you can just give it to the recyclers and they'll reproduce the lithium from it. In fact, one of his partners is doing exactly that. When they started Tesla, he has now left Tesla and opened up a factory where he collects all the iPhones and all the old batteries and recycles them and comes out with because the mines are still not working 100%, but I think soon they will get going. Yeah.
One quick question. Could you recap on what Bezos is?
Bezos?
Bezos.
Yeah, well, Bezos, he's the owner of Amazon, right? Now, his guide is to make more money. And he sort of uses it. The human greed is what he's aiming for. Not like Elon Musk, where he's trying to save humanity and making, some very difficult projects work. Not Bezos. Bezos wants to sort of, pay his work staff the least and send us the most stuff through the door so they can consume more. So I'm not a great admirer of Amazon.
When we use, we try and batteries that are finished, instead of just chucking them in the rubbish, I try and look for somewhere where you deposit your
Yeah,
battery.
don't chuck away the battery, your phones and anything else.
That's right.
Keep it because there's a people who wanting to buy that.
So what happens to the battery then? They go somewhere and they extract out the.
Yeah, they take the battery out. You know, in the phone, there's a little tablet-like thing. You
Yeah.
take that out and keep it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, because that's quite valuable. You know, lithium.
Yeah, if you can't come back in 50 years to see how many is planned,
Yeah.
we should.
You want to see all this?
Yeah, lithium went from $11 to $80 because of the demand now. Until more supply comes in, the demand is there. But then so many, especially the GM, I think the analyst, one of them calls it, you know, because of Biden's real and the financial world's bias against Tesla. Because for some reason, they have not been able to understand Tesla. They could always think of it as an automotive company. And therefore, they value it as that. They forget about the technology, they forget about all the production, you know, capacity that they have, and all the other brilliant ideas that they have. They discount all that. But anyhow, the financial people, he's given a name to them, not he, but some of those people who are on the side of Elon. Morgan Stanley, have you heard of them? Yeah, they call them Moron Stanley. And you got Goldman Sachs, another fellow called Old Man Sachs.
That's very strange because usually people, financial people sitting in Wall Street, will go anywhere. It's going to make them a buck.
Yeah.
You know, so I can't see why they rejected his ideas.
But would I be right in saying that capitalism, in fact, has held back progress that has been made here? Because I remember seeing in a program 30 years ago, an electric car being driven around Oxford, which was developed by a small company, and the big companies bought the patent.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard of it again.
Right, because that's how they kill it. Exactly. That's what they did. That's what they did to the old energy companies and so on.
Well, now because of the
Manufacturers, you know, General Motors, you know, Ford, they just squash these things because it wasn't beneficial to them.
But these days, they can't get away with it so easy because on the internet we know more about what's going on.
So electric buses tried in London.
Yeah,
just after
Sue.
the First World War.
You have a question or do you want me to finish?
Yeah, not a question, I was just a comment, and I had a friend who worked for Lucas in the very early 1970s. He was showing an electric car at the motor show. And we were all expecting this to be, you know, coming on board and for sale very quickly, and then it all faded away. And I always wondered why. I mean, it's a big thing in there, it's on television.
I think it's only when Elon Musk came into the picture that the battery has come to life. You know, the battery world. And the General Motors name appropriately called government motors because they give money to the government. You know, the democratic donations and so on. So,
I'm just saying, there are electric buses in London 100 years ago, but it never really took off because petrol was so cheap.
Trams.
No, this is
They're not trams. Polybuses, they're electric.
These are electric buses with batteries.
sorry, I missed that. I was just because I record this and I put it on YouTube. So you can click on that and see it all over again. Sorry, can you repeat that, Steve?
Yeah, just saying, 100 years ago, there were electric buses tried in London with batteries in
Hmm.
And at each depot, there were batteries charging points. And then just drive over, get charged. But it came to nothing.
You know the single deckers that we've got with a big thing on the roof?
Yeah.
That's all batteries. 46 is thing there. If you look at
We
number
now
4.
have buses powered by hydrogen.
Yeah, single decker, not double decker. Because they have a fat roof, you know, and that's all batteries.
Yeah, but they're hydrogen buses now, double deckers as well, being tried.
Yeah, the hydrogen sort of thing there, you see when Elon Musk was opening the factory in Berlin, You had Scholz, who's the chancellor. He was standing next to it. No, it wasn't Scholz. It was the other guy, the CDU guy, who did the successor to Angela Merkel. And he's saying to Elon Musk, he says, what about hydrogen? Shouldn't you think about hydrogen? And then Elon Musk turned around and said, look, I'm wasting my time on this guy.
But why would that be then? Is it not a going from?
Well, if you look at what we have in hydrogen is the type of setup that we've got for fossil fuels. Need to pipe it in, store it, this, that, or the other, endless amount of issues there. Maybe for some specific cases, like a big power station or whatever, they have a hydrogen plant, which they can extract from water in some way or the other. But it's not really for general, because nothing is cleaner than electricity. Yeah. So I didn't quite get your whole thing. It was just a comment, was it?
Sorry?
I didn't quite. Was there a question in that comment?
No, it was just a comment that, I mean, at the time, this was being hailed as the future of cars. And we're talking about 50 years ago.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
actually had an electric car there at the motor show, which worked.
Yeah.
And I just wondered why.
Because the automobile and the oil industry has been adept at making their case and killing all these other alternative, options, because they wanted to sort of, make money out of oil and of building roads. That's why America has got full of highways and not too many railroads. I mean, our underground is fantastic. You can go from one place to another. Maybe just a few cities in the USA that you've got a subway system.
Yeah.
But at least, we managed to have some efficient, underground and transport. But then, of course, days are coming when car buying will not be at the same level that we expect it in the future, because we will be sharing the robo taxis, the Ubers, if you like. Now, I find Uber to be very, very convenient, and the charges are very reasonable. So it's really for families and so on. I think it's convenient to have your own car. Okay, having for time. Oh, I think we've gone beyond our time. Okay, fine. Thank you very much for coming. And
That's very encouraging. I feel really optimistic about it. We've really lifted my.
absolutely, you've got to be optimistic, because he is one of those people who's not government. Governments can't do much. They talk a lot and they do little. And what you need is technology coming in and being able to deliver, to uplift humanity, which is what, yeah. Okay, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, Mickey. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
To wash it back.